So on Wednesday night it's got really, really bad. The rain came down really, really heavy, and all of a sudden the stream started coming onto the street. There's a wee stream up there which comes down flooding on the street. The river had on up the mountains, it came down into the stream, flooded the whole street. So it did, along with the sand. The sand came into the area, started blocking all the drains along with the water. Everyone, all the residents, even down to all the children, everyone was fantastic. They helped clear it all up, brushed it all up, opened all the drains. So they did. We rang all emergency services. No one came out to help us. The only one came out to help us was David Bell from Sinn Fein and Jennifer McCann, the Junior Minister. They were the only ones that came out to help us. David Bell got tore in, got all the work done, opened all the drains with us. He was actually down drains with us. So he was actually down one of the drains. We were shoving him down drains to help us. This went on to 11 o'clock that night. Still no one came to help us. 7 o'clock the next morning, David Bell came back onto the area again with sandbags from Connolly House he got, and started giving them to people again, and started brushing the streets with the residents again and helping to clear this area again. And that way we just kept opening drains and brushing stuff down until we got rid of it all on our own. We're looking at these gardens. It was the people, safer neighbourhood people come up, got shovels along with Youth Action that came into the area and started filling wheelbarrows ourselves and taking the sand. So we done most of the work ourselves. So we did. Lisbon sent an assessor out. He did come out and he did assess all the homes. That was very, very quick. Full still hasn't come out and sanitised the homes, which they promised they would do. There's a terrible smell from the homes. It's terrible, it's horrific. The water, when the water came into the street, the water started off to about our knees. By the time it had finished coming into the street, it was just about up to my waist. And all the sewerage came out. We were walking, myself and others were walking amongst the sewerage with children, young children, trying to get back and forward to our homes and getting people's furniture out and trying to help people. The damage to the homes was that we had to go in the next day, take everyone's furniture out and throw it onto the streets and put it into these skips that you see behind us. There's people's tables, sofas, chairs, garden furniture, loads of clothes, kitchen stuff, all damaged are in these two skips. So there was quite a lot of damage done to these homes, and it's going to take an awful long time for them to dry out. So it is. Terrible long time.
Well, of course, obviously it was down to the heavy rainfall, but there was a number of contributing factors that obviously added the difficulties people in this area experienced as a result of that rain. As you can see, the river behind us was one of the kind of main problems that they had because it overflowed. In terms of the amount of water going into it, apparently it wasn't cleaned. And therefore the water overspilled in the street. Now, the added difficulty was it took a lot of sand with it that appeared to come from some construction site, because a lot of people were saying it was builder sand that got washed down in the street, as you've seen, and straight into people's houses. So you had a mix of the water and the sand, and in some houses there was sewage along with that, which obviously created a major difficulty for people in those areas. Obviously the one shining light that came out of this experience was that the community all responded, started to give help and support to local people in the area. There was great community spirit, like the Safer Neighbourhood project, Sinn Fein councillors, neighbours, all contributed. Now, there were a couple of services that did help, but the view of residents says that the response from the emergency services was very poor, and obviously that's something we're going to look at. I have to try and get people sorted out in terms of the devastation that's been caused to their houses. 5
people still out of their homes, and they're all telling us that they're very, very disappointed with the response from emergency service to this point in time.
Well, and that's an issue we're going to take up. I've been in touch with council, as my colleagues have been, Thursday, Friday and Saturday. I'll be returning again tomorrow. There's still some issues that are outstanding for people, particularly in terms of emergency payment and in terms of skips and street cleaning. But the housing executive have a role to play. There's housing associations that are involved. As you can see, in terms of river, responsibility relies with a construction company for that. So there are a number of things that we need to follow up on, as well as obviously talking to the likes of DRD and DARD in terms of their role, in terms of avoiding this in the future.
There's culverted there till that where it was supposed to be, down the back.
Well, I was down in City Hall the evening we got the huge downpours. I was in a meeting. We had seen the rain coming down and very quickly realised and knew that this was quite a heavy and extensive downpour. I had received phone calls straight away from residents in this area, in the Brook area, saying that their houses were flooding, that there was flood water coming up. It was coming up through this river. and this river has been a constant problem for the people. But my role, I suppose, in all of it was straight away whenever the emergency room was opened, we realised that in order to try and alleviate some of the problems, we needed to get sandbags up into the area. So I took a brief which was to direct council staff in terms of where they needed to get sandbags to. I couldn't have done that if it hadn't been for our activists on the ground. Our activists were out and about. They were phoning us constantly and saying, this is where we need to get sandbags, here's where people are having problems, we need to get emergency services sent out here. And some points we were actually having to direct services in that emergency room to emergency. So fire brigade, all of those, we were saying, you need to go here, you need to go there, there's walls collapsing, there's flood water coming into people's houses. If it hadn't been for our activists on the ground, we couldn't have been dealing with these issues the way that we were dealing with them. We couldn't have been getting the direction that we were getting with them. Residents have been absolutely delighted with our activist base. Once again, we're out on the ground. Once again, we're the first people there trying to help people. I came into council in 2010. I came into council during a crisis whenever we had serious issues around deep freezes and then thaws and people's water pipes bursting. And back to then to now, there's nothing different. It's our activist base that are out in the ground, that are dealing with issues and that are helping people that in their greatest times of need. You know, we know that some of the outlying areas around West Belfast, like the Colin area, we're also having some major difficulties. I think they were also having major difficulties with getting sandbags, so much so, in fact, that the first sandbags that were able to go up into the Colin area came from Belfast City Council. There are two council areas, but it was Belfast City Council, through our direction, through our activist base on the ground, where we were able to get those sandbags up into West Belfast, that people from the Colin and our activist base from the Colin were coming to us and saying, how do we get sandbags, and we were able to help them as well. I think that shows a huge feeling on behalf of Lisburn City Council and other agencies there, that they weren't able to get sandbags out. I think within 24 hours, I think it was the next day, whenever people up there were getting sandbags through the council. Yet in Belfast City Council we were able to do it the day before, but only through our direction.
And it'll have to come up
it'll dampen off from
for months
dampen so
for the smell and not go away.
And will I be able to put this floor back down again?
No,
or
no,
new one?
don't.
What's that work?
Oh, I know.
It was replaced a couple of years ago, the same thing.
Is it aye?
You can feel it there, the
Well, I was based mainly in Twinbrook because I couldn't get out. Twinbrook, parts of Twinbrook, Poglass and Lagmore were actually isolated from everywhere else. So with Jennifer and a number of our other activists, we went round to the pensioners in Glasgow who suffered really sustained flooding. So we tried to do what we could there. Other activists kicked in and the community infrastructure kicked in to get people who need it moved out of their houses moved out, and to try and ensure that there wasn't more damage done. And today what we're about is actually just following up on some of that stuff. In fairness, our activists have been on the ground over the last 2 days trying to follow up with residents and with homeowners to see what they can do, and we're just coming in and trying to follow up on some of it.
Jennifer McCann, I know you've been in contact with some of your colleagues, your ministerial colleagues. What sort of reaction have you got from them?
Well, the first thing to say, first of all, was that they failed miserably, the organisations that have responsibility for this, particularly Lisburn Council and the like of the river agencies and road service and organisations like that. So I spoke directly to Danny Kennedy, the DRD Minister, and expressed my concern at the lack of response from those organisations that had responsibility for dealing with it. As Sue said, only for our own activists and community activists, and out that night, I think a fire service were the only other people that we saw on the ground. So I spoke to them and I've expressed, but also I also spoke to Sammy Wilson's office as well, and I spoke directly to the Mayor of Lisburn. And I think that what we need to do now is, first of all, to make sure that these people are looked after and their homes are made better again, if that's possible, because flooding, as you know, can cause quite a long-term damage. But then we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And if people clean the like of rivers, if organisations make sure that the drains and the sewage is clear, if road service can check the roads, because as Sue said, you couldn't get in and out of the Colin area on Wednesday night. So all that there needs to be put in place, but we need to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And I think all ministers who have the responsibility, whose departments have that responsibility, need to come together in some sort of a coherent and holistic way to deal with this problem.
Paul Maskey, indeed, the house we're standing in has been flooded 15 times in the last number of years. What's your thoughts and what's your hopes for that sort of intervention that Jennifer's talking about?
Well, I mean, I think that's very important, and without that intervention from some of the government departments, then this is going to be a continuous problem, which is totally unacceptable. And I think that what we have to do is to ensure that the agencies and all the departments step up to the mark to make sure that this doesn't occur. It's sometimes impossible because the flash floods that we had on Wednesday night were horrendous, and it was probably the worst I've ever seen in my lifetime. But if you don't try to fix the problems, then the problems definitely will happen again. So let's do all we can, and let's push every single government department who has the responsibility, along with the councils which Jennifer has mentioned there, to make sure that they do step up to the mark, because some have actually failed to step up to the mark, and this is why we're seeing this. A house, for example, in the last 2 years, 15 times flooded. Something has to be done. People can't go on living like this because it's totally unacceptable. We've been around all parts of West Belfast in the last couple of days, and I have to say, while people are suffering because their houses are really damaged, it gives you heart to see communities pulling together. And I think that's one of the big things that many of the residents have said themselves, is that their neighbours have been out assisting, our own party activists has been out assisting them as well. And that's where people are saying is at least the community spirits are. Now, if that community spirits are, that's excellent. But government needs to have that spirit as well to make sure that they're stepping in to assist these people. It gives you great pleasure when you're around meeting with people, but it's also they are having problems with insurance companies. They're having problems even getting their £1,000. Some people have got it, some people haven't got it. That's totally unacceptable. If you're entitled to something, then you should be receiving a first-class service, and that's what we're here to do, to try to deliver that for the people of these areas who have been badly affected yet again.